Which early offseason rumor about the Mets is most likely to come true? I'll break it all down on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Down the Game Time app, credit account. You use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Well, I am back sitting in this seat recording an episode of Locked On Mets, and I missed it. For those of you who have been following along with the channel on YouTube or on your podcast feeds, I only missed a day, technically, right? Saturdays and Sundays were off for the offseason. Monday was the one day I did not get a show up, but I pre-recorded the last 3 shows last week. I have not been recording since a week ago because I was the best man at a wedding. We had the bachelor party on Wednesday and Thursday. Friday was all about recovery before the wedding weekend with the rehearsal and then the actual wedding on Sunday. Everything went off without a hitch. I did not blow my best man speech. I don't think I did, at least. I got some pretty decent reviews on it. And had it written out, but ended up speaking from the heart during the actual time to speak. Not great at looking at the notes, looking back up. So anyway, it all went well, but I missed out on a lot of Mets news. And really, none of it was news except for the Mets poaching a pitching coach, which we'll talk about in the final segment. Really just a lot of reports of interest. And that's what we're going to talk about on the show today, because we will do follow-ups on some of the names we're going to discuss, like Willie Adames. That'll probably be tomorrow's show, where I'll dive a little bit deeper into one of these targets for the Mets and if it is a good fit. But I just want to focus today on what's real, what's not. So let's start off with one thing that is definitely real. Steve Cohen will meet with Juan Soto and Scott Boras this week. Now, that's going to be a pretty big meeting, but it's not going to be anything more than a precursor of more to come. Steve Cohen is going to, put his best foot forward here, talking to Juan Soto and trying to make the case for why the Mets are the ideal landing spot. But until dollars and cents are discussed, and I don't know if anything much more than some really early preliminary talks will happen in this first meeting, we have no idea if the Mets will land Juan Soto or not, but they are getting out in front of the negotiations. They're showing their interest, and that is a good sign. Also, the first of what could be many meetings or conversations between Steve Cohen and Scott Boras, and that's going to be a relationship that will have to come into play in some capacity this winter. It would be shocking if the Mets did not sign a single Scott Boras client when you look at his roster, which includes not only Juan Soto, but Pete Alonso, Corbin Burns, Alex Bregman, Blake Snell, and Sean Manaea. For the Mets to not re-sign one of Alonso or Manaea, it'd be a little bit surprising. For them not to land one of the top dogs in the market in a Soto or Burns, also surprising. I don't know if they'll be in on Alex Bregman. Seems like they have another third baseman in mind, but Blake Snell, another potential top arm the Mets could target. So that's going to be something to watch here. How does Scott Boras try to get some of Steve Cohen's money? Not just some, a lot of Steve Cohen's money. In the past, Steve Cohen has talked about the relationship with Scott Boras. He said he has fun with the dialogue. He enjoys talking to Scott. Other owners have just completely shut out Scott Boras because the playbook in the past for Scott Boras was always go above the head of the GM or the president of baseball operations, talk to the guy that's going to actually write the check, convince them that his client was the answer to all their prayers, and that's how you get the absurd numbers that he's been able to pull in the past for his free agents. So this is a big-time meeting. As far as whether the Mets will land Soto or not, we'll have plenty of time to discuss it. But a more interesting free agent sort of popped onto the radar this week. I think this was the one time that I was really not regretting, because I was having a great time on a bachelor party, but one time I had a little bit of that FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. I was seeing that report of Willie Adames potentially being a target for the Mets, and I was like, man, that's something I can't wait to talk about in the show. And I've had to wait for a couple days. And like I said, we will be doing a follow-up on Willie Adames specifically, probably for tomorrow's show, unless some other news breaks. But John Heyman reported the New York Mets have shown some interest in Willie Adames, who would be comfortable moving to third base. He's been a shortstop his whole career. For the right team, the right offer, he would slide over to third, which for the Mets would then push Mark Vientos over first and would probably mean the end of Pete Alonso's days playing for the New York Mets. Adames is not a Scott Boras client. He's represented by CAA, but he is clearly the top shortstop on the market and should have a long list of suitors because of that positional flexibility as well. If a team just desperately needed a second baseman and that's where they wanted to spend their money, they could sign Adames, and you think he might be comfortable sliding over there as well. He's played very minimally at those two positions, but as we know, a good defensive shortstop can play all over the infield. Adames is that, a good defensive shortstop who brings some pop in the bat, hit over 30 home runs this year. I'm going to save some of my comments on Adames for tomorrow. It wasn't the top free agent that came to mind to me this offseason. And if money is equal, and I feel like it might be very close between Willie Adames and Pete Alonso, I still am of the belief that Pete Alonso is the better free agent fit because I think he has the more dependable bat. Adames has clearly the better glove, and he has shown some ability to be an above average, if not all-star level contributor with his bat. But those results have been a little bit fewer and further between than Pete Alonso's offensive results. And I am not of the opinion that you can't have Mark Vientos be your third baseman of the future. I honestly believe that he can continue to progress with the glove and at least be league average at the position. And maybe that's it. Maybe that's as good as it gets. But I don't think Vientos will kill you at third base defensively. I think Pete Alonso holds his own at first while the defensive metrics don't love him. I think the eye test shows that he's pretty good around the bag, which to me is the most important thing for a first baseman. Are you able to help your infielders get those balls out of the dirt, be a big target, get those high throws? Pete does that all well. He's not great with his arm. There are things that are deficiencies for him when it comes to the glove, but I lean towards the bat. So ultimately, do I love the idea of Willie Adames? Not necessarily. Do I think it's real? Absolutely. The Mets' interest. Willie Adames does fit the mold of what David Stearns would try to build with his teams. He already acquired Willie Adames once, and it would make a lot of sense that he's looking at spending $150 million or maybe even more than that and deciding between two players and thinking, should I invest that in Adames, a shortstop that can be our third baseman, and then if anything ever happened to Lindor in a season, we could always slide him right back over to shortstop? That defensive versatility with the still, solid bat, that is a player that I think David Stearns would find more valuable in a vacuum than Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso brings a whole other element to it when it comes to being a fan favorite, being a homegrown Met. That does carry value. That does carry weight for the franchise. Alonso's going to sell more jerseys than Willie Adames. He already has. Okay, so that is important in some respects, but just for winning baseball games, if I had to guess which player David Stearns thought was more valuable, I think it's probably Willie Adames. So I think there is a lot of smoke here, and we will talk about that a bit more on tomorrow's show. I think it's a real question. How many star free agent bats will the Mets sign? Could they sign Soto and Adames? And if so, what an offseason. That lineup would be absolutely loaded. Could they sign Soto and Alonso? Are they only getting one of the three? And which of the three would you most want? We will be talking about that more throughout this offseason, beginning with the Willie Adames show tomorrow. But next, there's been some trade speculation. Are the New York Mets in on Garrett Crochet? I'm going to break down that rumor in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page you place your bets. And again, remember, you got to place that $5 bet. If you win that, $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. So just find yourself the easiest layup on the board. Maybe that's an NBA game. You find a complete mismatch and you say, you know what? I know the Celtics are going to win tonight or the Knicks are going to win tonight. This is my time to sign up for FanDuel. Throw that $5 on the money line. And if they win, you win $150 in bonus bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports. You can check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor. Help us get to our next goal of 11,000 subscribers. We're within 200 now, so I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. All right, let's talk about another topic that probably deserves a full show later this week. The New York Mets are interested in Garrett Crochet. That was reported on by John Heyman and Matt Ehalt. Is this real? Is this just connecting some dots? It would make sense that the New York Mets would want Garrett Crochet. This is a guy that just had an unbelievable all-star season where he went from being a relief pitcher his entire professional career to showing up at spring training with the goal of being a starting pitcher, earning not only a spot in the rotation, earning the opening day nod. And then he carried that through, pitched to a 3.58 ERA and made all 32 starts, pitched 146 innings, struck out 209. That was nearly a strikeout per nine rate of 13 batters per nine, which is unbelievable. In the first half, you can make an argument he was the most dominant pitcher in baseball. He pitched to a 3.02 ERA in his first 20 starts, but he struck out 150 and 107 in a third innings pitch. He led the league in Fangraphs wins above replacement and in strikeout rate, had a really good walk rate as well. This guy just basically became one of the nastiest left-handed starting pitchers in the game after being a really nasty left-handed reliever earlier in his career. He just basically showed that what he had done in short spurts as a reliever, he could do over a full start. Now, Garrett Crochet does not come without risk. He has never done what he just did. He went from, what was like 70 career innings and he jumped it up and threw 140 this year. That's a massive inning spike, and he slowed down in a pretty significant way. Part of that, I'm sure, was the fact that he had no rhythm. He wasn't allowed to just go 90 pitches plus all year long. The White Sox started limiting him. There was all that talk about him potentially getting traded, but he'd only be traded if he could get extended, and that didn't end up happening. So he stays with the White Sox, and they let it play out where they don't shut him down, but he's only throwing a couple innings at a time. Tough spot to succeed in that way, but it does still leave you with a question mark. This guy is a one-year wonder as a starting pitcher. Can he replicate that? The stuff would suggest that he can, but he's got to stay healthy too. He's 25 years old. Is there going to be that, I hate to say it, but sometimes inevitable arm injury that comes with a hard-throwing young pitcher? You hope not, but you still have to put that into your calculus if you're going to trade for him. If you were just going to sign him on the open market, I'd have zero issue with the New York Mets making Garrett Crochet their top priority. The problem is that you have to give up big prospects, and then you got to decide, do you just let the next 2 years play out before he hits free agency, even though you might have given up a haul to get him, or do you extend him? And if you extend him, what kind of a discount are you getting on Garrett Crochet compared to the rest of the market? How much cheaper when it comes to average annual value will Garrett Crochet be on his next deal compared to Blake Snell? And I think a good example, and we'll probably talk about this stuff a little bit more in depth when I do a full episode on Crochet, but last year, Tyler Glasnow got traded from the Rays to the Dodgers. Now, he had a very interesting contract where he essentially signed this sort of crazy pillow at the end of his deal where he was avoiding arbitration with the Rays, where his first free agent year, he would make $25 million to pitch for the Rays, but everybody knew that he would never pitch for the Rays under that salary. They used that to trade him to the Dodgers, and then Glasnow and his camp sort of used that interesting contract structure to land an extension with the Dodgers, and he got to sign long-term with his hometown team. Could Crochet be in a similar boat? Could he end up coming to the Mets and signing a 5-year deal just like Glasnow did. In this case, that would allow Crochet to still hit the market around 30 years old. That's not a bad thing whatsoever. But again, a lot of risk for the New York Mets. Do I believe this could happen? I actually do. And one of the big reasons why is because the White Sox GM, Chris Getz, has made it known that the White Sox are focusing on a position player return for Garrett Crochet. The New York Mets, when it comes to their prospect capital, I would say their best prospects, or maybe their depth of prospects, probably more lies with their pitchers than their hitters. But if the White Sox are looking to get some volume in this trade, I think they would. I think they would want 3, maybe 4 pieces. The Mets do have some extra position players they can throw in to beef up a trade package while only having to give up 1 or 2 really good prospects. So what do I mean by beef it up? Here's an example. This is the perfect trade where Brett Beatty gets rerouted somewhere because Chris Getz is trying to keep his job. And he's going to do the best he can to take a team that was the worst ever, quite literally based on their record, and make them somewhat passable in 2025. So you get a guy in Brett Beatty who you can stick at third base and just say, all right, there's some upside here. If nothing else, we're probably going to get a replacement level third baseman. Defensively, obviously, a good one, but just when you put all the production together, he's not going to kill you, right? And there's upside. It's very similar to what they just did when they acquired Miguel Vargas from the Dodgers, a guy that needed a change of scenery, was blocked a little bit, ends up going to the White Sox, really struggled, honestly. So maybe that's not a trade to point to if you're trying to sell them on Brett Beatty. But I do think the point stands that this would be a trade where you could see a Brett Beatty included, a Ronnie Mauricio coming off an ACL, where a team in Chicago would maybe want to take a risk because they got nothing to lose. So get guys that are already pretty much major league ready and put them in your lineup every day in 2025 and see what happens. If everything breaks right, you might have a franchise cornerstone. If it doesn't, you have a replacement level player a little bit worse that's going to buy some time for some other prospects to make their way up, like potentially prospects you get in a bigger package here for Crochet, like a Jet Williams. Like Jet Williams might have to be the headliner to get a pitcher as good as Garrett Crochet. So, and when you talk about a package, if Williams is the clear-cut, blue chip that the White Sox are targeting, all right, well, they got a guy that can slide right into Double-A next year, and he could make a quick ascent, and all of a sudden, Jet Williams could be a potential star player for the White Sox as soon as the middle of next year, if not, a year beyond that. But you also have guys like Beatty or a Mauricio or even a Kevin Parada, a Luke Ritter, who's not really much of a prospect, so to speak, but a team like the White Sox wouldn't mind just getting a guy to throw in their lineup. It makes some sense. I just don't know how much you're going to have to give on top of Jet Williams. And I'm not talking about Beatty or Ritter or whoever I just named. It doesn't matter. Like those pieces are sweeteners, but they aren't moving the needle. What moves the needle is Jet Williams. What moves the needle is Drew Gilbert. What moves the needle is Ryan Clifford or Luis Angel Acuna. And of those players, I wouldn't want to give up more than one of them, honestly, in this type of deal. You could talk me into Drew Gilbert and Acuna or something along those lines. Personally, I hold Jet Williams in the highest regard when it comes to the Mets' top prospects. Ryan Clifford is the guy that intrigues me so much that I would hate to see him get traded, although you can make a case that he's behind a Gilbert or an Acuna in this system. Overall, though, my thoughts on this one is it could happen for sure. It's not my favorite course of action when you have Steve Cohen's pocketbook and plenty of free agents that can fill that need in your rotation right now. But I do think there is some real smoke here. And we weren't talking about Adames or Crochet at the beginning of last week. These are guys that we had to focus in on a little bit more. As I've been saying, I'll give you guys a full episode on each of them as we move through this week. There's another huge free agent, though, that we got to talk about. A guy that we did not even think would be posted to become a free agent. Do the Mets have any chance at landing Roki Sasaki. I'll go through that in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With Game Time picks, you can filter out the fluff and see only the best possible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. I also love when you open the Game Time app, there is Live Nearby as a section you can find where you can just look at what live events are near you. So you might have nothing to do on Friday night. Maybe you want to see a comedy show, or you want to go and watch a play on Broadway, whatever it is. You can find it all there in the Game Time app, and Game Time is the place to go for last minute tickets where you'll find the best possible deals. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. If you're an everyday listener of the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description and go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right, let's talk about Roki Sasaki for a little bit here. This is an absolute phenom that's hitting the open market, and he will be a minor league free agent. That is a key distinction we must make. The Chiba Loda Marines had an option to hold on to Sasaki, basically against his will. Keep him with their club in the NPB until he turned 25 years old. Then they could have posted him, and it would have been Yoshinobu Yamamoto Part 2. He would have been able to command a salary that would have been, well north, or total contract, I should say, that would have been well north of $300 million if he just stayed healthy and pitched a couple more years in Japan. But Sasaki has long wanted to come over to the States and play in the big leagues, and the Marines just decided, you know what? Not going to get in his way anymore. They're going to post him. And for them, that is a massive, massive financial hit they're taking because of the rules in the new CBA. All they will get is 20% of the contract that he signs. If they waited, they could have got $50 million. That's what Yoshinobu Yamamoto's original team in Japan was able to get when he signed that crazy deal with the Dodgers of $325 million, if I'm not mistaken. For Sasaki, now the best he can do is take up the entire bonus pool from whatever team he signs with for maybe $5 to $7 million, something in that range. That is the amount of money that these teams get to spend in international free agency for these players to bring them in. It's the same pool that you're talking about when the Mets signed a player like Giovanni Rodriguez last year, the top catching prospect in the game at the time. It's all coming from that pool. It's the same pool that gets affected if the Mets sign a player to the qualifier, or sign a player who got a qualifying offer this year. They will lose $1 million of spending when it comes to the IFA. So now when it comes to Sasaki, everybody pretty much is on a level playing field. There might be some teams right now that have more to give from their 2024 bonus pool money. The Dodgers, funny enough, have the most money available to them when it comes to the 2024 pool money. But as long as they wait a little bit and they post him a month from now, they will be able to open things up where all 30 teams will have their entire 2025 bonus pool money to use at their disposal and try to woo this guy over. I don't think that that's going to really be the deciding factor, though. If money was the biggest thing for Sasaki, he'd be waiting behind. And you can't even say this is a good financial decision for him, because he's got to now prove it and stay healthy for the next 3 years before he hits the arbitration system, where he can make up for it a little bit on the back end. And then, yes, he'll hit free agency and he'll still probably be, younger than 30 years old and still have a chance to take a big bite of the free agent apple then. But right now, he's just coming over because he's dying to play in the big leagues. And that's really exciting for a guy that has a career 2.02 ERA. This past year was a down season, 2.35 ERA and 111 innings pitched. The velocity was down a little bit, so there was a slight cause for concern. With that said, any team that signs him is just getting him as the most unbelievable minor league free agent signing ever. So there really is zero harm in pursuing this, and every team should be pursuing it. For the New York Mets, they can sell a big market. They can get Kodai Senga in the pitch. But what they have to offer in some respects pales in comparison to the Dodgers just when it comes to a team that's going to win, and also a team that has Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto on it. They probably would love to go over there and play with some younger guys who have been thriving in the big leagues. And the Dodgers already are Japan's team. If they got Sasaki, which everyone sort of expects them to get Sasaki, then it's over. They're going to clearly be the team that gets all of that money from Japan, and it's all going to funnel right into the Dodgers, who then can set it all aside and have Ohtani's contract paid off by Ohtani when it's all said and done. So that seems like the most likely outcome here, but the Mets have to make a case that they're the best fit for him. They can tell him, hey, we're going to do a 6-man rotation if we sign you. We're already planning to do that for Kodai Senga anyway. We're going to make the absolute most out of you. They could point to Sean Manaea and Luis Severino, even Jose Quintana, and say, look, we got a lot out of our pitching. We kept these guys healthy, and they're really investing in their pitching. They're investing in their pitching lab. They're investing in their coaches, because the Mets just poached a pitching coach from the Yankees, Desi Drusel, who served as the Yankees assistant pitching coach since 2022, and now he's going to take the exact same role for the Mets, working under Jeremy Hefner. This is a big deal. This is a guy that is widely regarded, and you add him into the fold, you poach him from the Yankees, probably paid him a little more money than the Yankees are, and maybe he saw an opportunity to replace a Jeremy Hefner at some point. Maybe Jeremy Hefner isn't long for the pitching coach job. Maybe he wants to move up and work in a front office, whether that's with the Mets or elsewhere. We never know what's really going on behind the scenes, particularly with the coaching hire. But what I will say is you're getting one of baseball's most highly regarded young minds, as far as just young to coaching and to the big leagues, who you can bring in now and make them a part of your staff to hopefully improve what was a strength for you this past year. That's something you can sell to a Sasaki. Hey, we got Jeremy Hefner and Drusel that you can bring into the room with them and talk pitching and see if what they say resonates with Sasaki. And if he believes the New York Mets are the team that's going to keep him healthy, give him a great chance to win, and also, of course, give him the opportunity to really cash in when he finally gets to Major League free agency, which will now be years and years and years from now. But it's going to be really interesting to see if finalists are ever revealed, if the Mets can hang in the race. Ultimately, if you had to take Dodgers or the field, I'm taking the Dodgers right now. But of all the teams that can make a compelling case to Sasaki, I think the Mets are pretty up there. I think they are on the cusp of some better things ahead. And they showed this past year what their fan base can do to get behind a team. If Sasaki wants to be the man, instead of just following with Ohtani and Yamamoto, maybe he comes aboard. He might have to play second fiddle to Kodai Senga for a little bit, but you never know how those things evolve throughout a season. I would love it if they got Sasaki. If you had to tell me one free agent that I want the Mets to sign, it might just be Sasaki, because of how much money you would save to spend elsewhere. If you're able to get Sasaki for just whatever it is, a $5 million bonus, and then he's making $700K next year, all of a sudden, look at that found money. You can go out and you can spend that in other ways. From my perspective, and from what other people are saying, the Dodgers just sort of seem like the answer, because this guy's going to be able to make up money in real time with endorsements in Japan while he is at this point of his career, which is not going to get paid much from his big league team because of moving over early. So that side of things makes me think it's going to be the Dodgers. He might want to get mentored by Yu Darvish, who's held in very high regard among Japanese pitchers. I think much higher than a Kodai Senga. So maybe he wants to go to San Diego and be the other side of a rivalry against that Dodger team, which would be a ton of fun if that's where he ended up. I think it's pretty far-fetched that he lands with the New York Mets. And so as we sort of talk about all of these rumors right now, if I had to rank what is most likely to occur, it's how we went through the show today. It was Willie Adames. I think that is the most likely rumor that, or the most likely signing the Mets make among these three players the Mets have some interest in, just because he feels like a David Stearns player because he already was one. When you talk about Garrett Crochet, I think the Mets would be hesitant to go right to the trade route when free agency is still at their disposal. And maybe that is what happens. Maybe Crochet doesn't get dealt until much later in the offseason when the Mets have an idea of, oh, wait, we struck out on Sean Manaea and Blake Snell and Corbin Burns. And now we're left with who knows what. All of a sudden, it's all right. Maybe let's push some of those chips in and get Garrett Crochet because he's the best of the options left on the board compared to whoever's still in the free agent market. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's show. I hope I covered a lot of the news and things you wanted me to talk about that I wasn't available for over the last couple days. I'm still going to be recovering a little bit here. My throat from a little bit of screaming and yelling at the wedding. Still not 100% back, but we'll be doing shows all week. I plan on making one up for the missed one on Monday on Saturday. So you're going to have plenty of Locked On Mets content throughout the rest of this week. I appreciate all of you who tuned in today. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you want to be Locked On Mets Insider, find the link in the episode description. You can follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. We're talking about Locked On Sports today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.